this is my review of Death Note. Okay, so in this episode, the police finally meet with L, and to their surprise, L is a disheveled young man, and they're kind of a little bit concerned because of his appearance. And sure enough, show their ID badges to confirm if he is the right person. At which point, he promptly scolds them for having taken their IDs out so readily, pointing out that if he had been Kira, he would have been able to kill them because all Kira needed was a name and face. Which concerns them a little bit, and then he invites them into his hotel room, has them get rid of their cell phones by placing them on a table, pointing out that the noise is just distracting to him, and then lays down all of his findings to the investigation team once they're all settled in. So initially he points out that they just need a name and face, and one of the police officers actually suggests that they actually, not show people's names in the news at all, which is a pretty reasonable idea. I mean, if you don't show a person's name, then how is L ever gonna kill anybody under Kira's name? But sure enough, it makes sense in the moment. But then L completely takes it apart and also asks them to call him by a pseudonym because he points out. If anybody is watching and they could definitely figure out that what L's real name is, and ask them to use a pseudonym for that reason. So in any case, L points out exactly what's wrong with that theory, pointing out that Kira is very childish and hates to lose, much like L himself, as L points out. And L states that if they did start withholding names, then Kira would most likely move on to the general population, since their names are more readily accessible, and that would cause a lot more problems than it was worth. So I'll instead suggest the opposite approach, which is that they actually increase the task force to an absurd number, and basically create a bunch of people that don't actually exist, which is basically a way of playing a psychological mind game against Kira, who won't know that any of these people aren't in fact real, and that the task force is in fact teeny tiny, which would definitely cause some problems, because then Kira would basically be backed into a corner and be unable to work because he wouldn't know who was an agent and who wasn't. So it would basically paranoia would set in and just cause Kira to be completely dysfunctional as a killer. So in that regard, it would definitely save a bunch of lives. And everybody agrees and they naturally applaud it. At which point, L actually relays his findings about what happened, pointing out that he was particularly active in the past, that Kira was particularly active in the past 8 days, but December 19th particularly stands out to him, and points out that there's definitely something about December 19th, since that was shortly after all of the FBI agents were killed, and they were all killed 8 days later. And he points out that there's definitely something off about December 19th, and asks the task force to investigate. But not before proclaiming that he's primarily revealing his face, because he's admitting that he's lost the short-term battle, but that he'll eventually win the end. And for this reason, he's decided to finally show his face, because he wants to show everybody that he's willing to put his neck on the line as much as anybody else, and that if anybody knew his face and him actually coming out of the public, it would actually cause problems for him. But for this reason, he decides to come out in public, pointing out that yes, he knows he's taking a big risk, but he also knows that it'll probably pay off in the end if he's able to catch Kira. At which point he dismisses all the agents, including Lei's father, but not before telling them to all meet with him one-on-one for interviews so that he can figure out if any of them is actually Kira or not. Which makes sense, since, as he just pointed out, a name and a face is all they have to have. So if anybody was in fact Kira, they could have killed him as soon as they got home. So for that reason, he's interviewing everybody to make sure that there's in fact no problems with the task force, and that nobody is actually Kira. Because as I've stated in previous episodes, and as previous episodes have stated in my reviews of them, Kira has access to insider information, so naturally Ella's going to be a bit cautious to trust anybody inside the police force, because there's also the chance that they could be Kira as well. So he's just making doubly sure. Meanwhile, Light has also noticed that there's a bit of an issue with December 19th, since he knows full well that he took quite a few risks that day with the whole bus jacking incident, and definitely concludes that if there was in fact one little oversight, it could cause a whole problem that could cause him to get arrested and possibly killed. So for that reason, Light decides to try and figure out if there isn't indeed an oversight that he should be worried about, but realizes that as long as nobody can actually pins the fact that Kira can kill with other methods other than a heart attack to the Kira case, he'll probably be fine. The next day, however, he's asked to bring a fresh change of clothes to his father at the police station, and surprise, surprise, Naomi is there with some information about the Kira case, because she's been investigating independently on her own. So Light drops off some of the clothes that he was asked to give to the police station, telling them to give his father the regards. At which point we actually found out that Light has actually worked with the police department in the past and has helped them solve a case or two. And they actually immediately ask if they could actually solve the case currently, and points out that he probably could, and could even probably beat Elle to the punch, which gets Naomi's interest because she's been investigating the Kira case, and only people who know about the Kira case would know about Elle. So she immediately takes an interest in Light, and the two start talking about the Kira case after leaving. Naomi naturally gives a false name to keep herself in the dark, so that way she's not a victim of being killed by the Death Note, which Light has. Currently, he has a piece of it in his pocket, which he keeps for emergencies. So he's been naturally taking a piece of it with him every time he leaves the house. But in case, he and Naomi start talking, and he realizes that she's the oversight. He realizes that she's basically almost deduced that something was fishy about December 19th, and that it was kind of lucky that he got to her first, because if he hadn't, she probably would have leaked out all the information regarding how Kira can kill without actually using a heart attack to actually prove that somebody her fiance was in contact with was actually killed and made contact with Kira. So it's entirely so in that regard, Light realizes that there's a very good chance that if Naomi ever meets with the police, it could cause problems. And naturally, he plots a way to actually get rid of her, so that he can actually dispose of her and make sure that that information never actually makes it back to the police. So yeah, this episode is basically, hey, there's this big oversight in the plot that could be a problem for Light if he doesn't act quickly and try and figure it out. And sure enough, it basically presents itself almost immediately. So this entire episode was basically, if this small detail about how Kira operates gets out, it's over. That's basically what this episode was setting up. If Naomi ever makes contact with the police, it's over for Kira. It's over for the entire case, because at that point they now know that Kira can kill with methods other than a heart attack, and that it will actually open up their ability to investigate enough that they would actually be able to find out that Light is Kira, which could definitely cause problems since they know that Kira operates alone. So yeah, overall, it's just what this episode set up, that there is in fact a very big oversight that Light needs to take care of if he wants to be able to continue operating as Kira. So I'm interested to see how he actually deals with that, but yeah, that's my review of Death Note. What did you guys think? Let's go discussion going in the comment section, but down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter in the description below. And also, check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks, so be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!